So here we're going to take a look at areas of a graph where we can see portions of the graph either increasing, decreasing, or staying constant. We are talking about intervals within this graph. Those intervals are the x values. So we're looking at the x values in which our graph increase, decrease, or stay constant. These are only the x values. It describes the portion of the graph that is changing, or in this case, for the first one, it says decreasing. If you notice right in here, it is decreasing in here. This graph is going from a higher function value to a lower function value. The question is, where is it decreasing? Where does that happen? Where does this graph decrease? And it is decreasing from -2 all the way out to 0. Now again, these are the x values where that happens. From -2 to 0, this is decreasing. Also, notice how I use parentheses around the -2 and the 0 both, because again, it's kind of like a roller coaster or an elevator or anything that at the moment it starts, we don't know what it's doing. So it's sitting there, and then so in this case, at -2, it's just sitting there. Then if you start moving forward on the x values, now you see that it's decreasing. When you get to 0, it's not decreasing at 0 because that's where a change happens. So at 0, because there's a change that happens, you do not know if it's decreasing at 0, or in this case, the next section of the graph talks about it being constant. So at 0, it's neither decreasing nor constant. It's where the change happens. So we cannot include 0 in decreasing, because then constant's going to come over here and say, well, no, it's constant at 0. And that would not be right as well. Because again, at 0 is where it starts being constant. So we don't know what's going on. It's decreasing as a constant, so we don't include it. And all the way out to 2, when it changes from constant to increasing, and so we use parentheses again. And then the last section of this graph, let's make that green. The last section is where it starts to increase again, and it is now increasing in function value. But keep in mind, the function value of that graph is increasing. However, it happens at the x values between 2 and 4. We're talking about intervals. The intervals are the x values. Increasing, decreasing, or constant, it's what's happening to the graph. Now, it does not tell us anything about the function values. It simply tells us how it's changing. It's almost like a slope of the graph at this point. So keep in mind, increasing, decreasing, and constant refers to the x values. And at each point where it changes from one type to another, it is not increasing, decreasing, constant. It's changing. We cannot include it. It's never included when it comes to those intervals. All right, it's different than domain and range. Domain and range, we can include the values. For intervals of increasing, decreasing, and constant, we have to keep those values out. So at this time, I want you to give that a shot. Can you name the locations, the portions of this graph? Remember, we're talking x values, where it is increasing and decreasing. And as you notice, this one does not have any sections that are constant. So if you would like to try this out, go ahead and pause the video. If you just want to see it done, here we go. So we're going to start off with increasing. And this thing is increasing in the following sections. It is increasing here. This portion of the graph is increasing. Then it does something in there, and then right here again, it's going to start increasing one more time. So there's two sections of the graph where this is increasing. and it is going to be from 2 all the way out to 5. Now remember, these are x values where this happens, not what value does it go from and ends up at as far as the function goes. So we're not looking at the y values for the fact that it's increasing. We see that it's changing. However, it's changing between 2 and 5. So it's going uphill between 2 and 5. Then it has this section where it's not going uphill. We'll talk about that one in a minute. And then it starts going up again. It looks like at 11, and it stops going up at 13. So it goes up again from 11 to 13. Now again, I'm not concerned with how high it goes. I'm just concerned that it's going up. The next section, it is decreasing. Didn't necessarily mean to pick orange, but we'll go with it. So it is decreasing. Where is it decreasing? Looks like it starts going downhill here. And then you might ask yourself, what's going on right in there? Is that constant or is it just, I don't know. It looks like it slows down. It's like it's dropping downhill, kind of slows down a little bit, still going down though, and then it continues to go down. So it never stops decreasing in that interval. It just slows down a little bit. So big drop, a little bit of a slow down, and then big drop again. And that happens where the other one left off, which is at 5. So it picks up where the other one left off at 5, and it stops where increasing picks up again at 11. Now, same thing we mentioned last time. I don't know if it's going up or down at 5. I just know it's changing, so that cannot be included. I don't know if it's still going down at 11 because it's actually going to start going up, so it's that changing point. We also don't say that it's constant at a given point because, well, it's just a point. It is constant if it stays at that same function value for more than just one value or one x location. All right, so increasing between 2 and 5, and then again from 11 to 13, and it is decreasing from 5 to 11. Let's take a look at 3 more graphs. These are some equations. The first 2 are pretty standard. The other one, the last one is a piecewise function. It kind of shows you a little bit of different stages. And you notice the first one, as we stated, is only increasing. The second one, we changed the equation a little bit, and now we created a section of decreasing. And the last one has all 3. So if you would like to try this out, go ahead and pause. If not, let's take a look. So for increasing, this thing is only increasing even though in the middle here, it kind of flattens out, but it never stays constant. So it's always increasing, right? But the question is, where does it start increasing? What is the lowest value of x in which this thing starts increasing? And you might be inclined to say, oh, it looks like maybe -1, or I might say -1.3. I don't know. It's a little more than -1, right? But keep in mind, graphs, unless otherwise stated, continue. Graphs, unless otherwise stated, continue. So where does it start increasing? Way down, just off the graph. And it starts at -infinity. Now these are not y values again, be careful, these are the x values. And where does it stop increasing? So it's increasing here, going up, going up, going up, and it runs off the graph as well. It stops increasing, well, kind of doesn't. It goes to positive infinity. And with any of these, no matter what, you're not going to include them, but you definitely don't want to include infinity because you don't know what it is. You can't include something you can't define. Next one, for increasing, if you want to try this, if you haven't yet, again, remember, just pause. If not, here we go. Increasing, right here, and then it's increasing again right here. So there's 2 sections of the graph. Where does it start increasing? It's off the chart at -infinity. And it stops at -1, not included. And then it does another section of increasing, starting at +1. Remember, these are x values. And it increases without bound, so it continues on to infinity. All right. Then for the next one, decreasing. Where's it decreasing? In the middle here. Now it's not from what y value it starts and what y value it ends up at. It's increasing between the x values of -1, and it stops decreasing once it gets to the x value of +1. Again, these are just describing the behavior of the graph, does not tell us much about the function values, but it just says what's happening to it. It is increasing, it is decreasing, it is staying constant. Well, this next one's going to do all three. So if you would like to pause, now would be the time. If not, let's take a look at the first section where it's increasing. I'm going to use blue for that, just to stay consistent. Or I guess you could say stay constant. It's increasing off the chart from -infinity. It stops increasing when x is equal to 0. Then we have a period of no change at all to our function values. It stays constant at the same level. It's constant between x being equal to 0 all the way to x being equal to 2. And remember, we never include increasing, decreasing, and constant because those are points in where the change happens. And then the last section of the graph is down here, and it's decreasing. It starts decreasing at 2. Again, this is an x value. And where does it stop decreasing? And this one can be kind of tricky because of what's happening to the graph. X values run off this way. So it goes from 2 all the way off the chart to infinity. But then you might ask yourself, well, this thing is decreasing, right? So even though the graph itself is going towards -infinity, we're describing the x values. So this is actually positive infinity, that it's decreasing 2 as far as x. From 2 to positive infinity, the graph is decreasing. It is going towards -infinity. It's kind of, weird to think about. It's going towards -infinity, which tells you this thing is losing value. It is decreasing in value. However, it happens between 2 and negative and positive infinity for the x. All right? So now what I want to do is I want to take a look at a graph. So what I want you to do is I want you to put this equation here on Desmos. Let's graph y equals x to the third plus 3x squared minus 1. So here we are on Desmos. We're going to take a look at the graph of y equals x cubed plus 3x squared minus 1. And we're asked to find sections of the graph where it's increasing, decreasing, or constant. As with most functions, you're not going to run into too many that are constant. However, this one is increasing, and it starts off the graph, and it's going to keep increasing until it gets to this point where it starts to decrease, and it's going to keep doing that until it gets here. Then it starts to increase again. But what are those points? So we have here from -2 to 0. So that's the 2 points where changes happen. So as we mentioned a second ago, this thing is increasing from, and again, it's off the chart. So as far as the x values go, it started off at -infinity, and it stopped increasing when it got to -2. Then it starts to decrease. So it decreases between -2, and it stopped decreasing when it got to the 0. Then after it got to 0, it started to increase again So it increases one more time from 0, these are x values again, don't forget, and it doesn't stop increasing after that. It runs off the graph, so it increases without bound all the way to infinity. All right, so in this graph, it's increasing until it gets here, then it starts to decrease until it gets here, and then it increases again and it runs off the chart.